Welcome to today's Explainer. Have you ever noticed how the most polished, perfectly crafted content you read online kind of just slides right off your brain, but then some completely random, mundane observation from a total stranger sticks with you for literally years? Well, today we are setting the stage for a massive paradigm shift in how we write, communicate, and connect in the digital age. We're going to unpack this fascinating concept from our source material about what actually happens to human writing when artificial intelligence can suddenly do the perfect stuff way better than we ever could. Picture this. You're a writer. You spend weeks agonizing over a beautiful, serious, sweeping essay about the death of your father or the complex nature of human love. Then, on a total whim, you dash off this strange, completely mundane piece of writing about a quick trip to the grocery store. Guess what happens? That mundane piece gets 40 times the engagement. 40 times! The readership, the emotional resonance, it's a massive, absolute attention multiplier compared to the serious work. So what exactly is going on here? Why on earth did a 600-word essay about a bag of frozen peas completely eclipse these carefully crafted, deeply personal essays about death and love? How does a totally unremarkable moment in a supermarket manage to capture so much human attention, generating emails and profound connections from strangers all over the world months after it went live? Let's dive in and figure it out. Section 1. The Frozen Peas Mystery, a co-op freezer at 8:14 p.m. To really understand this mystery, let's look at the highly specific scene from the text. It's a Tuesday in February, 8:14 p.m. to be exact. The author is standing right there in the freezer aisle holding a 78-pence bag of own-brand garden peas, quietly crying, while some stranger nearby just pretends to read the label on a frozen pizza. The author goes home, puts the peas away, and writes 600 words about the experience. And the result? It just blew everything else out of the water. As the author admitted, they had written about death, love, and their father, but the peas earned more engagement than all of it combined. You know, for 3 whole years, the author kept asking the completely wrong question. They kept looking at their serious essays and wondering, what's wrong with my serious writing? Why didn't it land? They were completely missing the hidden magic of those peas. It wasn't about the serious essays failing. It was about what the peas essay successfully achieved. Which brings us to Section 2. What is ordinary proof? The load-bearing detail. This mystery leads us to a massive breakthrough realization. The peas weren't just the subject of the story. No, they were evidence. They were undeniable physical evidence that the writer was actually standing in that room, living through that very unflattering moment. Think about it. When you write about grand concepts like grief, the reader kind of just has to take your word for it. But everyone instantly recognizes the specific harsh lighting of a supermarket or that breath of cold air when you open a freezer. And that crucial point is defined right here as ordinary proof. It's the small, low-shimmer, slightly embarrassing detail that makes a piece of writing impossible to fake. Look at it this way. Readers do not want the shiny gold trophy you brought home from the war. They want the wrinkled, slightly faded parking ticket you got on your way back. That parking ticket, that is proof of life. Sure, it feels a bit cringe to admit you struggled to park your car, but that cringe is exactly what makes you undeniably human to the reader. Now, what's really interesting is this stark contrast between abstract concepts and ordinary proof. Literally any machine could churn out a paragraph about the concept of watching my father age, but saying, both hands on the armrests, a small exhale before the lift? Wow, that is visceral, undeniable human evidence. It's the difference between saying, I read a book before bed, versus I reread the same paragraph 3 times with my mouth slightly open because I was distracted. The abstract concept is something you have to choose to believe. The ordinary proof is a physical reality your nervous system instantly recognizes. Section 3. The 2026 AI problem. The quiet sniff test. Let's see how this builds into an urgent economic and cultural reality for what the author calls the 2026 problem. We're stepping into an era where readers are constantly, subconsciously, scanning content for human authenticity. What used to be just an aesthetic preference for relatable details has suddenly become a structural necessity for survival online. I want to direct a challenge to you right now. That polished, lyrical, perfectly structured prose you're probably striving to create, that is exactly what readers are now assuming is generated by AI, because AI writes beautifully about ideas and life lessons. As a result, readers are now running the subconscious sniff test on literally everything they read. They're asking themselves,
Wait, was a human actually here? And the one thing AI genuinely cannot fake is the boring, hyper-specific, embarrassing truth. An AI doesn't have a life, so it can't authentically invent standing in that co-op freezer at 8:14 p.m.
Section 4. Trophies versus fossils, the changing currency of attention. To survive this massive shift and avoid that AI filter readers are developing in their minds, we have to completely change our metaphor for what constitutes good, engaging writing. The currency of attention has fundamentally changed, and honestly, most creators haven't noticed yet.
This paradigm shift really comes down to this: trophies versus fossils. Trophies are your polished achievements, your 5 lessons I learned, that perfect brochure copy of your life. Trophies are what you desperately try to sell to people. But they are suspicious now. Fossils, on the other hand, are ordinary moments preserved purely by accident: a leaf in the mud, a footprint, crying over frozen peas. Nobody sits down and intentionally engineers a fossil. When a reader encounters a fossil, they don't feel sold to. They feel found. They feel completely recognized by a stranger.
The stark reality is that the internet is drowning in trophies. The market for them is saturated and approaching zero. But the market for fossils, it is wide open. Abandoning the polished CV version of yourself isn't just an aesthetic, stylistic choice anymore. It is the only competitive economic edge left for creators who want to capture real human attention.
Section 5. Rules for ordinary proof. How to leave your fossil. So how do we actually pull this off in our own work? Let's dig into the specific playbook derived from our source material for capturing ordinary proof while avoiding the traps that totally ruin it.
First up, we absolutely must avoid these 3 fatal mistakes. Number 1, generalizing. Trying to be more relatable by saying things like, I think we've all had that experience where. No, that's actually cowardice. Stay in your specific experience. Number 2, concluding. This is a massive one. If you set up a vivid scene and then spend 3 paragraphs explaining exactly what that scene meant, you ruin it. When you conclude the lesson for the reader, you literally take away their seat at the table. And number 3, smoothing, making every single sentence perfectly graceful. Look, AI is perfect at smoothing. Leave the rough edges and the abrupt pivots. Asymmetry is now a human credential. Notice how the difference between dead writing and alive writing is entirely in the specifics. Saying last week is dead writing. Saying last Thursday at 3:30 acts as an oath of truth to your reader. Visual writing is kind of cheap now. Anyone can describe what something looks like. But leaning into non-visual senses, like the smell of the freezer aisle or the hum of the fridge, builds a physical room the reader can actually stand in. Don't just say a supermarket. Name the exact Waitrose with a loose-fitting door. So here are 4 actionable steps you can start using today. 1. Keep a notebook specifically for your wrong, petty thoughts. The thoughts you'd happily say at a dinner party are too local. The petty, embarrassing ones are the universal ones. 2. Use exact times in specific shop names to swear your oath of truth. 3. Always include a non-visual sense to build the room. And 4. Keep one slightly embarrassing detail. I know it physically hurts to share that cringe detail you desperately want to cut to make yourself look cooler, but do not delete it. That is the live wire of your story. The writers who survive the next 5 years are going to be the ones whose work cannot be confused with something a model produced. Let that sink in. The polished, perfect era is ending. The rough, highly specific, embarrassingly human era is here. So I leave you with this final thought. What slightly unpolished, deeply ordinary fossil are you going to stop hiding and finally preserve for your audience today?